It is not too difficult to understand the paranoia and lack of discipline in the years that township anger and frustration really boiled over. Necklacing was something completely different. Between January 1984 and June 1987, at least 350 people died with a tyre around their neck. Benedict Marenene's father, Patrick, was a community councillor in Bongulethu. In November 1985, Benedict was 12 years old.
I saw my father coming back from work. When I looked around the township, I saw that I heard the toyi-toyi sound. I ran towards him to meet him, to advise him not to get into the township. And he said, no, they won't do anything They won't do anything to me because there's nothing I've done. As he was coming to the corner of 4, the toyi-toyiers were coming. He was carrying a gun, but he was someone who had never shot at any person. He shot in the air, and then people were chasing him. And he was facing the people, but moving back, he was sort of retreating. As he was retreating, he was tripped by another colored, and I was next to him. When this colored tackled him, he was caught. When they caught him, Desmond was there. When my father was on the ground, he gave him a blow with an axe on the neck, and they put a tyre around his neck.
What was it in our people or our history that made this ghastly practice possible and so popular?
There's a whole process that leads finally to the brutality of the necklace as a method of murder. And that for me is actually what we should have recorded in the 80s, and it never got recorded. Nobody said, I began by saying no, and then I stayed away from school. And then I picked up a postcard, and then I wrote a little poem, and then I pleaded with so-and-so, and then I was in the street protesting with a legal method of protestation, and then I got my first hand grenade, my first petrol bomb, right? And then my first stone. This is how things developed. So there's a whole process that led to the climax, which was the necklace murder itself.
Why did it survive for a while, for 2 or 3 years? It was repeated many dozens of times in South Africa. What was the symbolism of it? What was so important about necklacing?
It survived for, I'll say 2 reasons. One, very important reason, our own idiosyncrasy as people who are struggling, right? The whole notion of a self-satisfaction, of seeing yourself in power of some other people, because this is what it did. Because you must understand that there was a target. The so-called necklace person wasn't just a person. The person was called a target, right? You went and you attacked the target. This was some show of muscle, of some strength, which if you look at it deeply actually meant nothing, because this was not an exercise of power. The real power that needed to be challenged was state power. And this is where you needed to hit it. But we ended up hitting at 75-year-old women in many cases, a single cop in a lonely township. These were finally our victims. Wrong victims, as far as I'm concerned. But then, I didn't look at it as a victim. Nobody looked at it as a victim. We all, I think, looked at it as an opportunity to flex our muscle, to say that at least there's still some power left in us. It was brutal. You must understand. I think that's the one reason why it survived. The second reason I think it survived was that other people recognized the futility of the necklace murder, in fact, and hyped it up. This is why for the first time we saw murder on our television screens. The necklace was sold by the South African media, right? Because of its gruesomeness, because of its propaganda quality. And what it did is satisfy the other need that we had. We want to see ourselves as popular. And here we see ourselves in popular media as some kind of people with power over certain people. But on the same time, here we play right in the hands of the South African popular media, which was of course ran by the interest of the National Intelligence Strategy and all these kinds of people. I remember when I first raised the question about necklacing on the death of Marcus Kosana, everyone who spoke, my comrades, spoke about it as commenting on it. And they made it clear to me that we should stop commenting to condemn, right? Because we are not commenting to condone. This is what they said. This is what people around me said. So nobody wanted to condone, but nobody wanted to condemn. The kind of people who got involved in necklace murders, if you could analyze them, they would never be part of serious political thinking, right? They'd be on the edges of the struggle. They'd be the foot soldiers. There are these guys who want to be seen as part of struggle, who really believes that they're part of struggle. But in terms of political, intellectual articulation, many of them, I'm not saying all of them, many of them were not part of it. And so they were real people who were in the margins, right? And so necklacing basically, as a brutal murder, had its effect not only on the victim, but also on those who perpetrated necklace murders, right? Many of them got mad. Many of them have got deep senses of remorse. Many of them are not all right as I'm talking to you now. And you're going to see more during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when people begin to speak openly about necklace murders. When people, because the people, and this is the difference between the South African forces, South African Defence Force members, and people in the township that committed murder, that people in the townships are humble enough to go and sit in front of Bishop Tutu and say that I did that and I'm sorry I did that. These other bastards are not.